Human-centered design. It's about launching a new product or service and relating it right to your customer. Stay with us to the end of the video. We're going to have some great tips for you. And as always, we got a worksheet that we're going to release. Hi, welcome back to Blunt Force Business. I'm Brian LaFauci.
And I'm Patrick Marino.
And today we're talking about human-centered design, building out your new product or service or revamping your current product or service to ensure that you're hitting at your customer. So let's jump in like we always do right away with our Blunt Force facts. Blunt Force fact number 1 on human-centered design is chicks dig empathy.
If you're going to be focused on humans, you have to be able to walk a mile in their shoes. And we all know, those of us who've been through divorces, we're all criticized for our lack of empathy. So
I was not.
It's a good skill to have if you're interested in picking up chicks. Not you, huh? Because
I got it. Empathize is one of the first parts of the 5-part human-centered design series we'll go into, right? Chicks dig empathy. Blunt Force fact number 2 we're going to talk about today is ideate to great, baby.
Yeah, so there's no such thing as a bad idea unless you're talking about like the final solution, or there's actually a bunch of bad ideas. But I mean, if you're just, you've got to keep throwing out ideas if you want to move and grow and improve. And there's no such thing as a bad one, unless it's like slavery or something like that.
That was a bad idea. Ideate to great. Blunt Force fact number 3, ABT. Alec Baldwin reference right there.
Always be testing.
Always be testing.
Always be testing, because you don't know if you got it right. You don't know if you got it right. The only way to know if you got it right is to throw it out there and see if it works, and then take it back, reconfigure, put it back out.
That's it. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about human-centered design, we're talking about five steps that you're going to go through whenever you're looking to, like I said, maybe launch something new, product or service, or do what you should be doing on a regular basis, which is that thing we call like rinse, wash, repeat, and review, right? So we're looking at our current practices, all the things we're doing right now to make sure, are they really connecting with our customer?
Yeah, and there's digital tools for this. We've actually talked about this with our group that we meet with every week. There are digital tools for this. Like, for example, if you wanted to see how well a landing page for an ad is working out, right? You can actually use digital tools and see where people are clicking. You can see tools on where people are falling off. They're not reading the rest of the page. So you can actually make some really data-driven decisions, but you don't need to be fancy and have expense. That software is still pretty pricey.
Yeah.
So usually I think we're talking about like interviews, right?
Yeah,
research. I think that talking to people. And seeing, and we'll talk about this more in depth, but you can't just ask the surface level questions for this.
Right.
Because you can't just be like, oh, what do you think of the product? Oh, it's great. We use it all the time. Like, well, you have to get more, you'll talk about this, but you have to get a little deeper.
Absolutely. So a great way for you to kind of follow along with this conversation and make it impactful right out the gate is go into the description of the video and download the worksheet we got for you, because you can start using that to follow along with what we're talking about and start jotting down your ideas. So let's start with the first piece of this, which was actually Blunt Force fact number 1, chicks dig empathy. So the first part of this process is all about empathizing with your customer. And it's taking empathy, but really taking it to that kind of next level, and not just saying, yeah, I know what my customer wants. Step 1, you got to dump all preconceived notions. And then step 2, you got to take active and very focused steps to engage with them and watch them using your senses. So literally, if you have a product or something that you're putting out there to the world, or a service that you think like how your client is going to want to use them, a lot of this is observation. It's old school, pen and paper, sitting down, watching and observing, right? And then taking notes as to what you see. We have one of our clients on our call, on our weekly call, who's doing a dog training business, right? So as part of this process and talking to them, it's literally going to the dog park and listening to the words that the dog owners are saying. Like, what are the commands they're saying? Because you may think you know what they want, but connecting with them starts with knowing, like, what currently, how are they talking to their dog?
I think the biggest challenge for a small business owner, especially a new one, but even just it's not just, I shouldn't say it's a new one or a small, biggest challenge for all of us is bias, right? And we bring in, you said, throw out your preconceived notions. So what we tend to do is we tend to think about our product and service and how we interact with it. Because a lot of times, if we're a small business owner, we built it, right? We built the product, we invented the service, whatever it is. So we think about how we engage with it.
Right.
Right. And we think about, with the dog training example, we think about how, like, and especially for the dog training example is a good one because you think of it in terms of somebody who's pretty educated about this stuff. Right. And so that's a big part of it is like, especially from like the marketing perspective is, especially as a marketer, you see things a little Differently. If you're a small business owner, you're marketing your business, then you see ads, advertising and marketing materials a little differently. You're just like, oh, that's cheesy or that's hokey or that would never work or I would never buy that. I think that's terrible. Instead of understanding maybe why. Another example, rather than the dog training example, you think about like, I don't know, like Medicare commercials on the TV. It's always this flashing like red and blue and like certain language, all that stuff. And you're like, oh, it's really hokey. How would anybody ever do it? Well, no, the opposite is true. Everybody reacts to that. Everybody in that range that they're targeting reacts to it. So you have to take your lens off and take your biases and throw them out. And you have to really focus on the user. And the only way to do that sometimes is to take yourself out of it and observe, like you just said, and figure that out. Because if you don't do that, your biases will easily get into the process, and now you're going to miss something, or you're not going to test something that you should be testing.
And then along with that, it's formalized conversation, and you can submit surveys, and they work, and we do that. I mean, I love like anytime we're mid program or wrapping up a program or doing anything like that. It's all right. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't like. Focusing on, tell me what you don't like, right? Because that to me is always the thing I want to know. Like, what do you not like about this? But if you can do that in a conversation like this, so if you can get someone on the phone or in person and say, all right, talk me through it. And you can like read their body language a little bit, because then you can kind of see if they're just, they're giving you like just what you want to hear, or like, there may be a little pause. You'd be like, all right, what was that right there? That pause. Whereas if you
have to dig in, you have to get into that question. We did that. We did this exercise. I was contracted with a supplement company, and we worked on just walking a customer through an ordering process, because you're trying to test all the things that we were talking about, in terms of how do they interact with it? What do they like about it? What do they dislike about it? You can't just ask a surface level question. So in this case, she was a loyal customer.
Yep.
Happy with us, right? So you get that all out of the way. But you have to dig into the process and see, like in this particular case, there was a couple things that were interesting to me that I would not have learned if I hadn't gone through it. One of them was like she did a search online for a coupon. Right, just out of the blue. She was like, oh, I'm just going to look to see if I can find a coupon.
Yep.
Because it's something like, I have like...
I do that all the time.
Yeah, so I have like my, on my browser, there's like an extension that automatically finds coupons. It's like on there. I mean, I don't even like it. It's just on there. It'll be like, oh, we found 3 coupons that might work with this. Yeah. I should just uninstall them. But in any event, like, that's something she did, and she found the coupon that worked. So what's the takeaway from that? Well, it's like, there's a lot of coupons out there we wanted to turn off because they're just out there and people are just gaming the system. But also, like, we want to control it. Like, do we want people to find coupons if that's going to improve their experience with us? Yes. We want to control the ones that are out there. We want to control the ones that are public, and we want to have a control over that process more, and not just have them out there, do whatever. And there was another thing she did, which I thought was interesting, was she walked in with a laundry list of things that she wanted from a practitioner. Like she had worked with somebody with blood work and the whole thing, so she knew exactly, here are the things I had to be taking. And she used the search bar to find those things, and our search wasn't that great. But we had done the work. We knew that our ideal customer for that particular supplement company was educated women of a certain age. Like, that's our freaking
bread and butter.
But we weren't doing a great job with our user experience of serving that person.
Okay.
And until we walked through it with her, There's a couple things like we fixed our search immediately. Like we made it better. And we had a team of people working on product descriptions, making sure the search worked better to find the specific ingredient she wanted. But then getting control of the coupon process. I mean, like just little things like that. I mean, like it was in some senses confirmation, but in some senses eye-opening. But such a great exercise.
Right.
Going through that and being able to empathize because again, like you do all the work on your ideal customer, right? You do all of it. Then you have to actually listen to that exact person.
I like it. It's awesome. Empathize. And that process it sounds a little daunting, I think, for some of our listeners might hear that and be like, oh, but the reality
Especially
is.
our selfish people.
Yep. The reality is that stuff can be priceless. And let me tell you, you want a way to get this done that is probably right in front of you and you might not be using. This is a fantastic exercise for a statistics class or a class in digital marketing. So you can find your local college, find a class teaching it, group project internship. Awesome.
Professor LaFauci.
Yep. Bring them into your
Always
company.
thinking.
Have them. I love doing using the intern process when you can make it work. It can be great. So great way to do that. So once you go through this empathize process and all the chicks are digging you because chicks dig empathy.
Chicks dig
right?
empathy.
That the goal of
Just
that.
ask the questions like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah. The goal
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Let's talk in our chick dig voice. Yeah. The goal of that is to kind of find the problem, right?
Yeah.
And so then we go to the next step of the human-centered design process, which is to define the problem now. So we find it through listening, and then we kind of define it. All right, here's what I'm hearing. Interviewed these people, watched, observed. Here's the common threads. I think the problem is X. Go back to the dog example, and they through observation and going to the dog park, the thing that you hear over and over again is dog owners saying, get down, right? Get down is a big one. It's the words that are coming out of their mouth. So the problem is dog owners have dogs that are jumping on people or jumping on other dogs, just jumping up, right? And that's the problem. So then once we define the problem through our empathy, we go through the middle stage, the third of the 5 stages of this human-centered design, which was our blunt force fact number 2, which is ideate to great, baby. Ideate to great. So that is the thing we commonly think of as like the brainstorming process.
Right. I mean, I can give you an example from the supplement company too. This wasn't my idea, but somebody had the idea in the company to raise the minimum price for free shipping. So the minimum price was like $150 order for free shipping. I think they raised it to $200, and the average cart value went up because, like, even working with the person that we interviewed for it, she added to her cart to get to the free shipping. She didn't care about the shipping options we had. Like, if she was ordering just one thing, she didn't care that we had like 5 different shipping options, ground and all the different
air next day.
Yeah, exactly. All those. She didn't care about those, but she
show up with a clown
free
and
shipping.
balloons.
Free shipping was important, right? So the idea from that was, okay, well, we know we had issues with our cart value. We wanted to pick it up. We raised the cost, but like again, like it only came from the other 2 processes.
I feel like supplement companies do these things well.
Supplement people are marketers. They're not, because supplements aren't real. That's the secret.
Some I agree with some of them. You're right. But I do a lot with that company, First Form. I get a lot of stuff from them. And they have a similar thing, just like that, right? At a certain amount, it's free. But they have this T-shirt thing, which at a certain dollar amount, they give you a free mystery T-shirt. You just tell them the size. Now, the mystery T-shirt, inevitably, every time it comes, just has their logo massive right on your chest, right? But it's a great workout T-shirt. Like, I use them to work out all the time, but I'm a walking billboard for their company. I have too many of these T-shirts now. I don't want any more T-shirts. I still, if I'm $5 away from the T-shirt, I will throw something in the cart that I know I'm going to buy eventually anyways. I'll throw it in the cart, and then I will just pick a size of like my kid or my wife, or I just give it to them. Here you go, it's a t-shirt. Right. But I still do it. I don't even need the thing, and I buy the extra thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, like, almost like it's a cynical way of focusing on the human. Like, because if you know that they're going to buy up to the point of the free shipping, then you should be able to use that
right
to your advantage.
Yeah.
You know,
and they absolutely will. And so to go into this ideate process and kind of dig in, and for those of you that are following along on the worksheet, there's a lot of different ways you can do this. So there's many, many different like strategies to this. You can pick whatever one you want. We'll go back to the description of the video. We'll throw a link in there too to a nice article that talks about 10 different ways that you can do this. So you can go through the process. But let's just talk about a couple here. But one of them I really like is called the worst possible idea. So when you're doing this,
sort of like the final solution. Bad
exactly. Idea. When you're doing this, you want to go around and you want to try to put together a team of people that have some diversity to them. That's number one. So find groups that you're part of where there's some diversity in there, diversity of thought, diversity of ethnicity, of race, of whatever, of experience, of socioeconomic status, because we want to expand the type of ideas that are going to come into our box here and going to get kicked around. And so the other thing that human-centered design really asks you to think about is think about diversity and inclusion with disabilities in this process as well. You know, when you think, a lot of times when we think about how our client is going to utilize a product or service, we frequently don't think about a client that might have a disability, how they're going to experience it. And I think that's an important piece of this, is kind of getting that feedback into the process, right? And allowing, I talk about, this is an example, just a small example of that. About a year into our ownership of our sport complex, where a majority of our clientele were Spanish speaking, Portuguese speaking, I finally was like, why are our flyers, every flyer on the wall that we have, and we had them everywhere, why is every one of them in English? A majority of the people that come up to the front desk struggle to speak to us in English, and everything we're putting out, you know what I mean? But it took, that was
trying to say Spanish-speaking people have a disability?
I'm trying to say it was a poorly ideated process we had, because that feedback, if we'd brought in a little more diversity in the group right up front with like, hey, we want to get in front, we would have clearly, someone would have said, what about the fact that, you know, and we didn't do that. So bringing that into the process, but the worst idea scenario is great. So if we said if we took a problem, let's take the problem of dog jumps a lot, okay? And now let's put the worst possible solution, and let's just start having conversations about them.
Shock collar,
right? Kick the dog, right? Maybe we kick the dog when it jumps. What else? And now we're just starting to
yell really loudly.
Yeah, yell. But when we write all these things out, what do we realize? Well, the real solution we're going to want to find is in the antithesis of that. But to get to that, we have to list the things that maybe we know are clearly not the things. Right. And then now it's framing like, okay, not that, but this.
Well,
right?
Plus then you're talking to in the dog example, you're talking to the person who does not like those inhumane ways of getting the dog to behave.
Yes, clearly.
And so that in your messaging, you'll use that.
Yes, clearly.
You'd be like, hey, stop using the freaking cane.
Yeah. I mean,
stop
it just opens
the dog with the cane.
Yeah. And then you can do things like a brain dump, right? We all know what a brain dump is, where people just there's nothing gets shot down. Matter of fact, you don't even offer feedback on anything. We're just getting words and information on a paper, and we're populating it. And then the other one that I really like is called Brain Right. Have you ever done Brain Right? Neither have I, but I was reading about it and I really like it. And I think I'm going to implement Brain Right with our online group today. Bobo likes brain right. She wants
That
to
was
use.
a good idea, huh?
She's like, I love brain right.
Do we yell
I
and use a shock collar?
We should yell and use this.
Get down.
She's like, okay, all right, Patrick. If you pet me, I will get down as long as you just keep petting me. So, Brainwrite's great. So, Brainwrite, it almost sounds like a board game you would play. So, I start writing down my idea. Like, I think that we need to allow dog owners to witness us working with a dog. And then I take that and I pass it to you, and you continue the sentence.
Ooh.
And then, so very much sounds like a game, doesn't
Yeah.
it? But it goes around, and then you would add to it, and then you would pass it, and then they would read what was written, and then add to it. So now we're creating this paragraph of ideas that have just developed themselves over like time from one idea to this diverse idea. Brainwrite. It's a great way to ideate.
Nice.
Yeah, the blunt force fact number 2, ideate to great.
Ideate to great.
So, we go from empathize to define to ideate, and then we go to the end, which is blunt force fact number 3, ABT, baby. Always be testing.
Always
and
be testing.
That's prototyping and testing. We say this, we say this all the time.
Yeah, we
you
believe
gotta
in
get shit in people's hands.
Yeah.
You gotta find a way. If it's a service that's not 100% refined, you offer it to some people for free and get their feedback, right? Like, you gotta find a way to now that you have what you think is a solution, you got to get feedback on that solution.
Well, you don't want to assume that something's going to work. You don't want to assume something that is right. You can actually try it. Put it out there, give people a chance to experience it. And we would do like A/B testing too. Like, you'd put out different versions and see which one. It's really important to test against your bias and be like, well, I think that this is the freaking no-brainer winner, and putting out the other version and seeing which one sticks. Because if you've done the work and you've been thinking it through, I think you're probably more likely, if you've gone through all these steps, to be pretty close to the correct solution. There's never, I'm always surprised when I get it wrong.
Right.
We'll try different forms in the marketing world. We'll try different forms, long form content, short form content, different colors, ugly design, things like that. And sometimes the ugly design performs better, or you're like, there's all sorts of examples of just it being a little bit counterintuitive to what you think is going to work better.
Yeah.
But it's important to have that test against your bias, because your bias is going to put you in the wrong direction so frequently.
Right.
And again, like I said, I'm repeating myself. If you do the work, a lot of times you'll have taken the bias out, but you have to at least give the other option a chance to fail.
And in the whole process here, as we kind of go through it, I think the thing that our listeners need to kind of keep in mind throughout this whole process is you have to go into it. You have to dump all preconceived notion, and you just have to go into it almost like, I have no idea what the client really wants. I have no idea what their problem really is. I have no idea what the right solution is to it. And I have no idea when they get it, if they're going to love it or how they're going to react to it. And that's the process. So if you go through each part of the process like that, inevitably, there's nothing, you can't help but just be a sponge, right? You become a sponge for all the information that's coming your way. And you start to now make decisions on all this information that's coming your way that is feedback and viable feedback from the thing that matters the most, which is your clients.
Yep.
Right? And getting it down. It's human-centered design.
Yeah, having empathy.
Love it.
Important. I think, yeah, it's and so we have this worksheet, right? I mean, to me, like, this has always been like there's got to be like a micro and a macro to this, because, like, to me, this is a big project. Like, this is like if you want to do it early, right? Early in your business or before you start your business, but you do want to do it, I don't know, once every couple of years, because if you do this, in order to do this correctly, you really have to take some time with it. You
Yep.
can't just half-ass it. That doesn't mean you can't be testing things every quarter or every year, but like, I think that to go through the whole process, especially with, the biggest challenge I think for small business owners in anything that we've been talking about or anything that implement is time. So it's like you're so busy, most of our people, there's two ways I put most of our people. Most of our people, they're either cleaning the toilets when they're need to be plunged, or they're freaking, shoveling the walk when it looks like there's snow.
Yep.
So that's what our people have to do.
Yep.
So it's really hard to then say, okay, now you got to take some time out of your day and go through this whole thing.
Yep.
You have to, but you have to find the time. Going out and interviewing people, that's a challenge.
Right.
And a lot of times people don't want to be like, I don't want to be freaking, again, my own bias. This stops people too.
Yeah.
I don't want to freaking do this.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the interviewee
Yep.
for somebody. Like, I can't imagine what service or product I buy where I really want to spend like an hour with somebody and talk about my process. I just don't freaking have the time. I don't want to do it. But that's what the small business owner thinks.
Right.
Because if you do reach out, somebody's going to reach back out and say, oh yeah, I'd love to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like the same thing like asking for reviews. Like,
Yep.
I'll freaking give you a review.
Yeah.
I love it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you'd be surprised who comes back, but you have to take out your bias in that too. But I think that's the obstacle. The biggest obstacle for the people who are probably listening is, time. And I think you have to take the time. I think it's probably like a once every couple of years thing.
You can do it that way, and I would offer up the fact that you can also integrate this as a working part of all of your products or services. And I think some companies are doing this well now, and you can see that. And if you think about, I had a guy that came out to my house to do my boiler clean. Very simple, yearly process. His entire checkout process was on his tablet when he was done. It was a very well organized system he had, right? Check me out. Part of that process was feedback. And it was like, hey, can you tell us what you think about these things really quick? And you literally just typed in your response, blah, 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 took the payment on the thing. But so he was getting customer feedback like all the way through. So some of us can look at maybe we look at the current things we're doing and say, are there ways that we could not just deliver, but observe as well? And just start taking account of what people are saying. And it's real easy to look for the 5-star review because it's great. But the real learning is done in the 1-star review. And if you can get that 1-star review to be not online, but face-to-face, hey, listen, that was not great, and blah, blah, blah. And all right, thanks. If you can hear and solve that 1-star review before it goes online, that's the ultimate win. Because now, one, we've gotten really valuable feedback. And two, we've caught it ahead of time where it doesn't necessarily do us any public damage, and we can actually act on it. And I think the way that happens is you make empathizing with your customer a priority all the way through, and learning about your customer and their needs a priority all the way through.
The bigger companies do this really well. I mean, like Amazon is notorious. Like, that's their whole motto is like, they're just like, freakish about the customer experience. And we make the customer experience, we'll freaking take over the world.
Yep.
If we can make the customers loyal to us and want us, like if you just hyper focused on the customer.
Yeah.
I think as like a business owner, I mean, I can think of myself, right, who's had a bad review out there. And even like the other businesses I've worked with, feedback is scary.
Well, that's why I think a lot of people don't do it.
Yeah,
because they're
feedback
afraid.
is scary.
Yeah.
Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to take, because it's like you give people the opportunity to, this is like almost like a rabbit hole, sorry, but like you give people the opportunity to give feedback and they start thinking about the things they don't like.
Yeah.
Because you want that.
Right.
But then it's like, oh, maybe, do I really want them to really think
done
about,
now?
or
now?
do I want them to just pay me every month?
You done now? How about now?
Exactly.
It's awesome.
But I think that's a big obstacle. So I think we need to, as part of your removing your biases and your preconceived notions, you need to not be afraid of feedback. You need to make sure that, feedback is going to make you better.
This
look at it as a positive.
This is 100% a process in feedback. Yep. It's awesome. Human-centered designed. Good stuff. The 5 state. Well, let's go through the 5 steps and then we'll do the 3 blunt force facts. You want to download the worksheet. It's in the description. You want to empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and then test. Use those 5 steps. Blunt force fact number 1, chicks dig empathy. Blunt force fact number 2 is you're going to ideate to great. And blunt force fact number 3, ABT, baby. Always be testing. Good stuff. I'm Brian LaFauci.
Patrick Marino.
Until next time.
Thank you.